Today, we're taking a nostalgic trip back to a time before smartphones, when public communication relied on something you don't see much of anymore, the humble payphone. It was once a lifeline for travelers, teenagers, and anyone in need of a quick call. But over the years, this icon of connectivity faded into the background. What led to the payphone's rise and eventual disappearance? Let's explore its fascinating history. Welcome to the History of Simple Things, where we delve into the fascinating history behind the little things that shape our world. To understand the payphone's rise, we need to go back to the late 19th century, when the world was still coming to terms with the marvel of the telephone. Invented by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, the telephone quickly became a revolutionary tool. But it had a problem: access. Most people didn't have one in their homes, and it wasn't something you could carry around. It was expensive and limited to the wealthy or businesses. That's where the payphone came in. In 1889, a man named William Gray invented the first coin-operated telephone in Hartford, Connecticut. Gray was actually an undertaker by trade, but necessity drove him to innovation. The story goes that Gray's wife was ill, and he couldn't find a public phone to call a doctor, so he decided to create a solution. His invention allowed people to make calls using a few coins, making phone communication more accessible to the average person. This marked the beginning of the public payphone system. As cities grew and people moved around more, payphones became a common sight in train stations, post offices, and street corners. The 20th century, especially the post-World War II era, saw the payphone's golden age. Payphones were everywhere. You couldn't walk down a city street without spotting one. The iconic phone booths, often made of metal and glass, became symbols of urban life. In some places, especially in the US and the UK, they were as much a part of the landscape as streetlights. In the UK, the red telephone box became a cultural icon, recognized worldwide. In America, Superman even used phone booths as his go-to spot for quick wardrobe changes, further embedding the payphone into popular culture. Before the era of mobile phones, payphones were indispensable. They weren't just for emergencies. People used them for everything, from making business calls to keeping in touch with family. Imagine being a teenager in the 1980s, calling your parents from a mall payphone to get picked up, or a traveler stranded in a strange town, relying on a payphone to get directions or call a cab. For many, payphones were a necessity. You dropped in your coins, listened for the dial tone, and hoped the person on the other end would pick up. Long-distance calls could be pricey, but for quick chats, payphones were convenient and affordable. Payphones also played a crucial role in emergencies. Before everyone had cell phones in their pockets, payphones were often the fastest way to call for help. They were positioned strategically in high-traffic areas, so if you were in need of assistance, a payphone was never too far away. In fact, many booths were placed along highways and in rural areas specifically for emergency use. Even during blackouts, payphones often continued to work because they didn't rely on electricity, making them a reliable tool in crisis situations. Payphones started off simple, but evolved as technology improved. Early payphones required an operator to connect calls manually, but by the mid-20th century, automation allowed users to make direct dial calls. The payphone network grew more sophisticated over time, with rotary dials giving way to push-button systems. Coin slots were designed to handle different denominations, with users dropping in nickels, dimes, or quarters, depending on the length and type of call. Some payphones also accepted calling cards, which let people prepay for phone time, a precursor to prepaid mobile plans. Despite its widespread use, the seeds of the payphone's decline were already being sown by the late 20th century. By the 1980s, cell phones were starting to make their appearance, though they were initially seen as luxury items. Early mobile phones were bulky, expensive, and far from accessible to the general public. But as technology advanced, mobile phones became smaller, cheaper, and more convenient. The tipping point came in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when mobile phones became mainstream. Suddenly, people no longer needed to search for a payphone or carry loose change. You could make a call from anywhere at any time. The convenience of personal cell phones made payphones feel obsolete almost overnight. As mobile phones took over, payphones began to disappear. By the mid-2000s, the sight of a payphone was becoming rare. Telecom companies started removing them because they were no longer profitable. The cost of maintaining payphones, coupled with dwindling usage, made it clear that their days were numbered. The decline was swift. In New York City, a place once filled with payphones, the last public payphone was removed in 2022. It marked the end of an era, not just for New York, but for a world that had relied on payphones for over a century. Despite their fall from grace, payphones left a lasting legacy. They were more than just public phones. They were cultural symbols, often serving as meeting points or photo backdrops. Payphones also played key roles in movies, TV shows, and books, where characters used them to exchange secret information, make important decisions, or, in the case of Superman, save the day. For many, payphones evoke a sense of nostalgia. They remind us of a time when communication wasn't instant and required a bit more effort. In some places, you can still find a few working payphones, kept as relics of a bygone era, a nod to the past. Though they've mostly vanished, some payphones have managed to survive. In certain remote areas or places with unreliable cell service, payphones still serve a purpose. They've become rarities, but they aren't completely extinct. Some have even been repurposed into Wi-Fi hotspots or community art projects, ensuring that the payphone continues to have a presence, even in the digital age. The rise and fall of the payphone is a story of technology and changing needs. What was once a crucial part of daily life now feels like a relic of the past. Yet, in its time, the payphone connected people across distances, provided comfort in emergencies, and became a fixture of public life. While we may no longer drop coins into a payphone, its role in shaping modern communication shouldn't be forgotten. So next time you see an old payphone on the street, stop for a moment and remember, that small metal box was once the cutting edge of communication technology. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.